Welcome to another episode of Spelling Bee Ninja, where we dive deep into the world of knowledge and understanding. If you're eager to learn about the fascinating ways our minds work and how they can sometimes lead us astray, you're in the right place. Subscribe to our podcast and become a part of our community dedicated to exploring the realms of logic, reasoning, and critical thinking. Today, we're unraveling the concept of cognitive biases, those sneaky errors in judgment that affect us all. Let's get started. Cognitive biases are like a blindfold for our minds. They are systematic patterns that lead us away from rational decision-making and truth. Imagine your brain taking shortcuts, racing to reach conclusions without examining the evidence carefully. Sure, these shortcuts can save us time, but they can also lead us into logical traps. Cognitive biases influence our judgment, memory, and decision-making in ways we might not even notice. Two groundbreaking psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, studied these biases back in the 1970s. Their work opened our eyes to how even experts can misjudge situations, revealing that these biases have predictable patterns. Kahneman notably received the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002 for his influential research. One of the clearest examples of cognitive bias is known as the availability heuristic. This bias can make us overestimate how likely or common something is, based on how easily we can recall examples of it. For instance, people often fear flying more than driving, although car accidents happen far more frequently. The dramatic news reports of plane crashes sway our perceptions, leading us to misjudge the real risks involved. Another pervasive bias is confirmation bias. This occurs when we seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore anything that contradicts them. Picture a person who believes a specific politician is corrupt. They will pay close attention to any articles reinforcing that belief while dismissing stories that show the politician in a more favorable light. This bias, coined by psychologist Peter Wason in 1960, has been linked to political polarization in today's society. A 2016 study highlighted how confirmation bias drives individuals to consume media that aligns with their views, fueling division. So, how can we combat such biases? Critical thinking skills play a crucial role. By actively seeking out opposing viewpoints and forcing ourselves to consider alternative explanations, we can keep our minds open and adaptable. Another fascinating example is the anchoring bias. This happens when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, our initial impression. Think about how people might evaluate a person's age. If someone hears that person is more than 80 years old, they might think the person is significantly older when asked later, even if that's not the case. Kahneman and Tversky established this bias in a 1974 study involving a spinning wheel of fortune. The researchers found that participants who began with high anchor numbers made higher estimates on unrelated questions than those with lower anchors. In real-life situations, anchoring bias can especially affect salary negotiations or even home buying. As critical thinkers, we must recognize these initial influences and adjust our judgments accordingly. Let's also explore overconfidence bias, where people have an inflated sense of their own abilities. It's amusing and tragic at the same time that most individuals tend to believe they're above average in various skills, be it driving or intelligence. This leads to poor decisions and unnecessary risks. The Dunning-Kruger effect, introduced by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999, illustrates that those with lower competency rates often overestimate their skills dramatically. For instance, a study showed that less adept financial traders consistently made worse decisions due to overconfidence. If we want to grow as thinkers, we need to actively seek feedback, test our ideas, and remain open to correction. Now consider the sunk cost fallacy, where people continue to invest in an unsuccessful endeavor simply because they've already put time, money, or effort into it. You might stick with a movie you've paid to see, even if you're not enjoying it, due to this bias. This concept, rooted in economics, was explored by Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in 2017 for his research in behavioral economics. Continuing to invest in failing projects can be detrimental, especially in business or relationships. Critical thinking teaches us to evaluate the best path forward without being hindered by past investments. It's essential to assess whether the current investment is worth it. The framing effect is another captivating bias, where the way information is presented influences our decisions. Imagine choosing between two medical treatments, one with a 90% survival rate and another with a 10% mortality rate. Despite being an identical fact, the framing causes us to choose differently based on presentation. Kahneman and Tversky demonstrated this in their research, revealing that people's choices could change dramatically due to different wordings. This effect even extends to political opinions, with research showing how framing can polarize voters. To overcome this bias, learn to reframe issues in various ways and focus on the actual facts rather than how they're presented. Lastly, let's discuss hindsight bias, often referred to as the "I knew it all along" effect. This bias leads us to believe that past events were more predictable than they were. Think back to an election. People often claim they always knew who would win, despite having uncertain predictions beforehand. Baruch Fischhoff introduced this phenomenon in 1975, demonstrating that hindsight bias can cloud our judgment and prevent learning from past experiences. To combat it, keep records of your predictions, acknowledge uncertainty, and judge your past decisions based on information available at that time. Social biases are also significant in shaping our perceptions. These biases include in-group bias, where we favor those in our own group, and the fundamental attribution error, which is our tendency to attribute others' behaviors to their character rather than the situation. For instance, if someone cuts you off in traffic, our first reaction is often to label them a rude person rather than consider they might be rushing due to an emergency. The fundamental attribution error, identified by Lee Ross in 1977, shows how we commonly misjudge others' actions. Social biases can lead to systemic discrimination in various fields. To be better thinkers, we need to consider others' situations and challenge our own biases, striving for fairness in our judgments. Mastering cognitive biases is a continuous journey. It starts with recognizing that we all succumb to these judgments and adopting strategies to minimize their effects. Key strategies include slowing down decision-making, seeking opposing evidence, considering alternative explanations, keeping a decision journal, and requesting feedback from trusted individuals. Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking, Fast and Slow, describes two modes of thinking: System 1, which is fast but often biased, and System 2, which is slower and more deliberate. Engaging System 2 when necessary helps us override these biases. Research from 2020 has shown that practicing debiasing techniques can lead to significant improvements in decision-making. The goal isn't to eliminate these cognitive biases, they're a part of being human, but rather to stay aware of them and counter them when it matters most. As Kahneman said, the first rule of thinking is that you are always learning something, and the second rule is that you are not aware of what you are learning. By honing our awareness of these biases, we can increase our effectiveness, rationality, and fairness in our thinking. Today, we delved into the intricate world of cognitive biases, exploring how our minds can trick us into inconsistent thinking and poor decisions. We examined various biases like the availability heuristic, confirmation bias, and the framing effect, and discussed how they shape our perceptions and choices. By understanding these biases and employing critical thinking strategies, we can enhance our decision-making and become more rational in our approach. Remember, awareness of our biases paves the way for better thought processes. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of cognitive biases. If you found our discussion enlightening, don't forget to subscribe to Spelling Bee Ninja for more insightful content. Together, let's sharpen our minds and improve our critical thinking skills. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning your assumptions.